Hey guys, so today I have a project pan related video for you. I'm going to be sharing the 8 easiest products to pan in my experience. These are products that took me just up to 3 months of dedicated panning to finish, which in the scheme of things for project panning, that's a pretty short amount of time to actually finish a product. Now keep in mind, most of these products were not full when I started panning them. Some of them were pretty close to full, but most of them were maybe about half full, 2/3 full, things like that. So I'll try to share how much I had when I started panning it. I'm also going to share the number of uses it took from the time I put it in my project pan, so you can kind of get a sense of how this might match up with your own usage habits. And hopefully if you are a project panner or you're thinking about starting a project pan, this might help you determine which products might be a little bit less challenging to use up. I do plan to have a part 2 to this, talking about the hardest products to pan. That'll be coming hopefully in the next couple of weeks, so definitely stay tuned for that. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'm gonna kind of rank these in order leading up to the absolute easiest. So number 8, this is one that I'm actually still working on, but it is very close to being done, and it is the e.l.f. Prime and Stay Finishing Powder. This has been really easy for me to go through. I've already repressed it, and this is kind of a spoiler if you do keep up with my project pan updates, but I've already kind of hit pan again, and this is going fast. So this is almost certainly going to be finished by my upcoming project pan update, which is in like a little over a week. So this took me 3 months of dedicated panning to finish. When I rolled it into my project pan, it already had a small amount of pan, but after I hit pan on this, I just flew through this. So you do get kind of a smaller amount of product compared to a lot of powders. It comes with 0.17 ounces / 5 grams, so it is a little bit smaller than your average powder. In those 3 months, I've used it so far 77 times. Probably use it another 8 to 10 times before it's finished. But keep in mind, most days I only use this on my under eyes. I don't typically set my entire face with powder. So if you are someone that sets your whole face, or maybe you even like to apply powder to touch up throughout the day, you would probably go through this even more quickly than me and in even fewer uses. So my next easiest product to pan was the Jordana Pore Refining Face Primer, and I do find in general, actually I shouldn't say that, I find some primers very easy to pan, and then I find some primers much harder to pan. Like for example, right now I'm panning my NYX Angel Veil Primer, and I feel like I'm just making the slowest progress on this. But the Jordana Pore Refining Primer, even though it's called a pore refining primer, it essentially just had the consistency of a moisturizer, so I would just apply it all over my face to prime my skin. It also only came with, I think, 2/3 of an ounce, whereas most primers come with a full ounce. So those were the reasons why I think I was able to use it up so quickly, but that took me about 3 months of dedicated panning, and I did start with most of the products still left. It took me 63 uses from the time that I put it into my project pan until I had it completely finished. But generally, I do feel like those more lotiony primers are pretty easy to go through, whereas the ones that have more of like a silicone consistency, like this NYX one, can take a bit longer. Alright, the next easiest product to pan for me was the NYX Dewy Finish Setting Spray. I still have the bottle, but I actually put a different setting spray into it. But this one took me a little over 3 months of dedicated panning to finish it. And I did start with about this much, although it was hard to measure exactly where it was because this bottle is opaque. I generally also find setting sprays pretty easy to pan. This also only comes with 2 fluid ounces or 60 milliliters, so it is a pretty small bottle, but it took me about 60 uses total from the time that I started panning this until it was done. So that one was pretty easy, but I'm also someone that when I use setting spray, I tend to apply a lot. I just can't help myself for some reason. I like to really feel like I've gotten an even layer all over my face, so I'll generally probably do like 5 to 7 spritzes of it. So if you are a little more conservative with how much setting spray you use, it might take you a lot longer. Another product that's been really quick for me to go through is the Pacifica Light Clean Foundation. I am also not quite done with this, but this one is really close to being finished, and it almost certainly will be done by my next project pan update. So this year I've been really fast at using up foundations, but I started with about this much left, and it has really only taken me about 3 months to completely finish it. And I don't know, in the past I've always thought foundations were much harder to pan, but this has taken me just about 3 months of dedicated panning, and then of course I had like a little bit less than half of it when I started panning it, but it has taken me so far 59 uses, and I'm gonna guess I have probably about 5 more uses left. Now 60 uses, that is a lot. I've been using it almost every day that I wear makeup, so that definitely helps. And one thing for me that has really helped me be more successful in my project pans over the past year is to just actually use my products and use them most days. I don't ever like to only use the product that's in my project pan, because then it's like, what's the point? The rest of my collection is just going to sit there going to waste while I am panning that item. But I would say I do my makeup, I do a full face of makeup almost every single day. I might take like 2 days off a month, and I do set usage goals, but I'm using each product typically at least 10 or 15 times, but with some things I'm using them 20, 25, 30 times during the month. So that helps me also see a lot of progress. Another thing to note about this foundation is that it doesn't come with a full ounce, only comes with 0.9 fluid ounces / 28 milliliters. So it's a bit smaller than your average foundation. But it's also a foundation where I don't like to use too much of it, or it can start to look a bit heavy. Another product that I really flew through, and I wasn't expecting to use it up nearly as quickly as I did, but you might remember this if you've been around since like the end of 2020, but the Jordana 12-Hour Made to Last eyeliner pencil in black. That I flew through so quickly. Took me 3 months of dedicated panning, and I used it about 50 times total. Now that was a pencil that you sharpen rather than a retractable pencil, and with sharpenable pencils, I do like to keep them pretty sharp because I like to tight line with them and just get a nice precise line. So that does help. And I think, of course, with any pencil liner that you sharpen, you are going to waste a little bit of the product just as you sharpen them down. So that is one thing to keep in mind. I would say I probably would sharpen it every 4 or 5 uses. If you don't sharpen yours as often, it might take you longer. But that was also a pencil that was very, very soft and creamy. So I felt like I saw progress on it very quickly. Number 6, another one that really surprised me, was the Physicians Formula Healthy Foundation, specifically the second time that I panned it, because I have panned 2 of those. And I talked about this actually in my How Long Does It Take to Use Up Base Makeup video that I posted a couple months back. I'll link that below, but it was interesting to see the contrast between the 2 years. But in 2020, it took me 2 months of dedicated panning to use up the about 1/3 of it that I had left. And that only took me 47 uses, which granted, that's a lot of uses, especially for 2 months. That means I was using it about 20 to 25 times each month, so almost every day that I did my makeup. And I went through it so fast. Now, one thing that I think contributed to how quickly I used it up this year was that this year in 2021, I almost always use a sponge to blend in my foundation. I just like the finish that I get with that method of application the best, so that's what I do most days. But in 2019, when I used up that same foundation, I remember I was using my fingers a lot to blend in my foundation. And a sponge is always going to soak up a little bit of the product, so I do think that that is one reason I went through it so quickly. But in 2019, it took me 57 uses to use half of the bottle, whereas in 2020, it took me 47 uses to use a third. But I do think that these days, I just go through foundations a lot more quickly than I used to. Number 7 and number 8 were actually both lip products. And number 7 was the Bite Lip Crayon in Glacé. Now, I did have the mini of this, so of course you're going to go through a mini of anything quicker than a full size. But the Bite Lip Crayon, I actually used that a lot as a blush, which really did help me use it up quickly. And also the Bite Lip Crayons have a very soft, creamy formula, so you do see a lot of progress with each use. Versus like the e.l.f. matte lip crayon that I've been using up, it's a much stiffer formula, not nearly as creamy, so you just don't see as much progress as quickly. But that one took me 3 months of dedicated panning, and I had used it a bit before that, but I think I still had I think it was still mostly full when I started panning it, and that took me 24 uses. And like I said, a lot of those uses were using it as a blush. I think it would have taken me a lot longer if I'd been using it as a lip product more, but I actually didn't even really like that color very much on my lips. But that is one of my biggest tips for panning lip products, is to use them as a blush, because that is the way that I'm able to see a lot more progress. And then my number 8, and this was the quickest by far out of all of these for me to use up, and it was the Tarte Glossy Lip Paint in Token. So this one took me 2 months of panning, and I used it 20 times before it was finished. Now, I did not remove the stopper from that one. I generally don't like to remove the stopper from lip glosses like that because it just gets so messy and gloopy, and I just felt like I had gotten plenty of uses out of it already. And I do remember using that Tarte lip paint as both a blush and a lip product, so that's, I'm sure, another reason that I went through it as quickly as I did. But I would say, you know, if you are wanting to start panning lip products and you're feeling intimidated, start with any minis that you have in your collection, because they are obviously a lot easier to use up than a full size, and it helps kind of like build up your confidence, I think. And last year I used up, I think, 4 or 5 lip products total. Some of them were full size, some of them were minis, and starting with the minis really helped me kind of kick things off and like get the momentum going. So those are my 8 easiest products to pan, the products that have taken me 3 months or less to finish. I will have a part 2 coming of the hardest products to pan, and some of those took me 9 months, 15 months, 16 months to go through. So there are definitely some very, very challenging products to pan, but I always recommend, especially if you're starting out with project panning, make sure to do a mix of easier and harder products, and maybe focus a little bit more on those easier products to just kind of, you know, get things moving, get the ball rolling. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will link my project pan playlist down below if you enjoy project panning content. I've done a lot of project pan videos on my channel over the years, and if you've not already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to see you again very soon. I upload about 3 videos a week, and hopefully I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!